Now, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked you, how excited are you for Season 3 of The Mandalorian after the new trailer? I'll also, of course, then be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll, and so let's get right to it by looking at the results. Where 36% of voters said pretty excited and will certainly watch it, 32% said super excited and can't wait for it, 19% said somewhat excited and or will likely watch it, and then there was 7% who said not really all that interested and probably won't watch it, and a final 6% who said not excited at all and have no interest in watching it. Okay, so even though the results were, I think we can safely say, pretty heavily skewed in a positive direction here, that most people, nearly 70%, fall into either the super excited or the pretty excited category, which is honestly where I'd put myself at this point, somewhere between a 4 and a 5. I do have high hopes for this upcoming season. Anyway, even though I'm excited for it, and I think the majority of fans are pretty eager for the third season of what has been, in the eyes of many, the best thing, or one of the best things Disney has put out there for Star Wars, most of the comments, however, left on the poll did tend to discuss what they were worried or apprehensive about, or maybe issues they have going into this season. And so instead of just making a video saying how excited for it I and many others clearly are, which likely wouldn't make for the most interesting video ever, let's mainly look at and candidly discuss the concerns some fans have, though I will try to sneak a positive comment or two in there as well. But before doing any of that, let me once again just take a moment to quickly say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these or any of my videos. It is all very much appreciated. Also a big thank you to everyone who supports this channel over on Patreon. And so let's now kick this off, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time comes to us from Rezkov, who said, Book of Boba Fett put a dent in my excitement for Mando Season 3 due to Grogu returning to Din far too soon, in my opinion. It undoes what was left off in Season 2, which would have led to Mando going through a character arc where he learns to be who he learns to be without Grogu in Season 3. The trailer increased my hype a little bit, but overall I'm more curious than I would say hyped. And yeah, I'm certainly very curious about how this season is going to play out as well. I'm someone who, and I know some out there are very much going to disagree or not like this, but I'm someone who's never really found much interest in the idea of Grogu becoming a genuine Mandalorian. To me, it just feels a bit silly, especially considering he hasn't really grown into his own yet, that he's been more of a plot device than an actual character. Which isn't to say I don't like Grogu or that I didn't enjoy him and Din together in the first 2 seasons. I very much did, even though it's not even remotely what I expected or thought the series was going to be. I am a fan of Grogu, but I think, generic idea or not, it made more sense for him to go off with Luke and become a Jedi or work on becoming a Jedi, and then reunite with Mando down the road a season or 2, and maybe after an animated show with Luke and Grogu training together. I also have a very hard time believing that Favreau and Filoni, after putting together this really good story arc with the two of them that had a really emotional payoff at the end of Season 2, that they would put them back together not only so soon after that, but in a different show. That's just not cool, especially for those only watching The Mandalorian, and those people very much do exist. The Mandalorian has I think it's sort of transcended Star Wars and is watched by people, mainly for Grogu, who don't otherwise or wouldn't otherwise care about or even watch Star Wars in the first place. Which is something I think Disney is very much aware of, and why they may have suggested to John and Dave to bring him back ASAP and to have him in Season 3 of The Mandalorian, that there is a lot of money to be made off that little green guy. Which then brings us to this comment from Master Tiandrines, who said, I'm still just mad they were so unconfident about their Grogu decision that they undid the ending of Season 2 in another show, not even making it to Season 3 with the consequences. They also derailed Boba Fett, which wasn't going well, but didn't need 2 random Mando episodes shoved in. They're just too enslaved to selling toys to actually commit to a good story. Going along with this was also a comment from Lee Walker, who said, Season 1 was about protecting Grogu, Season 2 was about getting Grogu home to the Jedi. If Season 3 is about Mando finding his place among his fellow Mandalorians, why did they need to bring back Grogu? My worry is they have bent to the wishes of Disney's marketing department rather than the story writers department. Okay, so as someone who collects and keeps his eye on the Star Wars merchandising scene, if you will, who follows all the news and goes into stores looking to see what's out there and so on, I think it's becoming clear that Grogu sales have slowed down quite a bit, that a lot of the same stuff has been sitting on the shelf for a long while at this point, and that nothing new has taken its place, that everyone has more than enough merch of Grogu in, let's call it his potato sack look. So if in this upcoming Season 3 we see Grogu get some sort of new outfit, maybe even a full-on Beskar suit, cute little helmet and all, and then the very next day after that episode airs, we get a wave of new toys and new merch in general, all of him in this new suit or with this new look, whatever it might be. If it's all hitting the shelves the day after or it's up for pre-order the day after, I think you'll know exactly why he was brought back so soon. Alright, our next comment then comes to us from Lum Vaughn, who said, I think this season will ramp up the action and probably the special effects as well. I'm excited to see what larger connections the show works into it. Will the main story arc play seamlessly into Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew? I also hope we learn more about Grogu's backstory. March can't come soon enough. And I certainly think and hope that after seeing the flashbacks again to the Jedi Temple and Order 66 in the new trailer, which we initially get a little peek of in the Book of Boba Fett, that it indicates we're going to get some explanations for Grogu, like who saved him, where he's been, and so on. I think it's just time for those mysteries to be answered already, and it's just a shame we won't have Luke there to guide him through his memories like he started to do again in the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, could you just imagine him, Luke, looking into Grogu's mind and seeing his father, seeing Anakin slaughtering the Jedi, slaughtering younglings and everything? But anyway, assuming this crossover event series that was mentioned a couple of years back now by Kathleen Kennedy and really hasn't been mentioned since, if it is indeed still a thing that the cancelization of Rangers of the New Republic didn't derail it and make them scrap the whole idea. Anyway, if it is still a thing, and it probably is, I think we'll see some connections or lead-ins to Ahsoka and perhaps Skeleton Crew as well. Probably not big ones, but little ones like maybe a Thrawn name drop again, or learning the remnants of the Empire have a secret new leader whose strategies have been leading them to victory after victory over New Republic forces, or maybe some hint about something happening out in wild space or the unknown regions. I think there's a potential for a lot of little tidbits, but nothing too juicy that's going to lead into them. Alright, and moving on now, we have this comment from Benjamin Rowe who said, I'm not surprised the second option has a slight lead on votes. I was pretty excited to watch the recent trailer, but kind of didn't do it for me completely. Looked kind of cool, interesting even, but didn't jazz me up as much as it might have if Andor didn't exist. Interesting. Also, we have this one from Brad Johnson who said, going to be hard to go back to Mandalorian and being spoon-fed the story after having Andor and such excellent storytelling, but still looking forward to it. Then also this comment from Patrick Newton who said, Andor has set the bar so high that going back to Star Wars now feels so different, like my eyes have been opened. And though I'm aware that not everyone out there loved Andor or thought that it felt like Star Wars or whatever it might be, for me it was a game changer. It was proof that exceptional Star Wars is possible under Disney. It was fantastic, and not just because it was a well-made Star Wars show, but because it was simply a well-made show that happened to be Star Wars and incorporated elements of the franchise very naturally. I don't know how much sense this will make, but it felt like Star Wars was the backdrop in Andor and it never bled into the foreground, while also still having great world building for the Star Wars galaxy, whereas The Mandalorian has Star Wars front and center. It's very much trying to be a good Star Wars show first and foremost. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or wrong or a bad approach. It's not failing at it either. I'm not saying the show is suddenly bad in hindsight because Andor was so good. But upon rewatch, and I'm doing re-reviews of the first 2 seasons over on my other channel if you are interested. Anyway, after this rewatch and having seen Andor now, it does feel like it maybe tries a bit too hard sometimes to incorporate Star Wars elements into it. It tries a bit too hard to be Star Wars, which again, isn't exactly a bad thing. You do want levels of interconnectivity and callbacks that make this feel like the same galaxy as other things have taken place in. But the connectivity oftentimes doesn't feel coincidental like it did in Andor, as much as it feels very blatant and intentional and in your face, and in areas where you really don't necessarily need it. An example would be using R5-D4 in The Mandalorian, a droid who we first see in A New Hope, and is apparently still hanging around or stuck on Tatooine 10 years later. Which, yeah, it makes sense that he'd still be there, don't get me wrong. But the fact that, as seen in the new trailer, he is apparently going to end up being Mandalorian's new droid for his modified N1 starfighter, it just feels like something you didn't have to do. And granted, it's something that a vast majority of people will miss or not catch or even care about without some video telling them the 3,344 things or Easter eggs that were in the trailer. Nor does it hurt anything or ruin the story in the least, but it just feels like one hell of a coincidence that you really didn't need to do. Alright, and on that note, let's get to just a few final comments before wrapping this one up. Starting with this one from Minty Blitz, who said, I feel so weird after watching it. I had been expecting this season for so long, and yet after watching the trailer, I just thought, maybe. I believe it might just be the whole, we're gonna introduce characters you already know vibe, and that feels weird. We also have this comment from Zachary Clark, who said, I really am excited for it, but there is a lingering fear that the show's luck will run out and it won't stick the landing. I am hoping that Favreau can correct the mistakes made with Boba Fett, if not in Season 3, then in future seasons. I'm hoping that we'll delve deeper into the Mandalorian culture, the houses, how they are divided, and a way for them to restore Mandalore. I hope the story is good and not rushed or ridiculous. We then also have this comment from Alan, who said, I was really missing the gritty, tactile look and feel of Andor, and I was really noticing the volume. Hope it's good, but my expectations are definitely tempered. And finally, this one from Question Man, who said, I really want to be over the top super excited about it and have every reason to be, except when it comes to Disney Star Wars, I never know when I'm going to go in expecting greatness only to get a pie in the face, but I'm still pretty excited. Well, that's all I got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me how excited you are or aren't for this upcoming season, or what you think about what I or anyone else had to say in this video. So again, do take to the comments below, let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.